What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Morning Breath podcast. If it's your first time and you're wondering what Morning Breath is, it's a daily devotion where one of our pastors and a co-host read a chapter of the Bible the night before, come the next day, and read it on air with you guys. If you didn't know this, we do this Monday through Friday with a new chapter every single day. You can find those chapters and our chapter list and everything that you need to know about Morning Breath on our app. Just download it, the East Coast app, or on our website at eccc.us. Today's episode is a little bit different. We're going to be pulling from one of our old previously aired episode. It's got gold in it. I'm super excited. Let's jump right into it.
You are listening to the Morning Breath podcast. Please enjoy today's show, hosted by Pastors Matt and Jessica Stallbaum.
We're in Exodus chapter 16.
Such and such and so and so.
It's such and such and so and so, y'all.
Yes, Exodus 16, and I will read through 18. You'll start at 19.
All right.
Exodus 16. They set out from Elim, and all the congregation of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they left the land of Egypt. The whole congregation of the Israelites grew discontented and murmured and rebelled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the Israelites said to them, "Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat and ate bread until we were full. For you have brought us," I have to do this in a whiny voice because they were definitely whining. "For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this entire assembly with hunger." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I will cause bread to rain from heaven for you. The people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, so that I may test them to determine whether or not they will walk obediently in my instruction. And it shall be that on the sixth day they shall prepare to bring in twice as much as they gather daily, so that they will not need to gather on the seventh day." So Moses and Aaron said to all Israel, "At evening you shall know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, for he hears your murmurings against the Lord. What are we that you murmur and rebel against us?" Moses said, "This will happen when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning enough bread to be fully satisfied, because the Lord has heard your murmurings against him. For what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Say to all the congregation of Israel, approach the Lord, because he has heard your murmurings." So it happened that as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of Israel, they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory and brilliance of the Lord appeared in the cloud. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "I have heard the murmurings of the Israelites. Speak to them, saying, At twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God." So in the evening the quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a blanket of dew around the camp. When the layer of dew evaporated on the surface of the wilderness, there was a fine flake-like thing, as fine as frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, "This is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Let every man gather as much of it as he needs. Take an omer for each person, according to the number of people each of you has in his tent." The Israelites did so, and some gathered much of it, and some only a little. When they measured it with an omer, he who had gathered a large amount had no excess, and he who had gathered a little had no lack. Every man gathered according to his need, family size.
Then Moses said to them, "No one is to keep any of it until morning." However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until the morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Each morning everyone gathered as much as they needed, and when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the sixth day they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person. And the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. He said to them, "This is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be a day of Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until the morning." So they saved it until morning, as Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it. "Eat it today," Moses said, "because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will not be any." Nevertheless, some of the people went out on the seventh day to gather it, but they found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How long will you refuse to keep my commandments and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why On the sixth day, he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where they are on the seventh day. No one is to go out. So the people rested on the seventh day. The people of Israel called the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. Moses said, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Take an omer of manna and keep it for the generations to come, so that they can see the bread I gave you to eat in the wilderness when I brought you out of Egypt." So Moses said to Aaron, "Take a jar and put an omer of manna in it. Then place it before the Lord to be kept for the generations to come." As the Lord commanded Moses, Aaron put the manna with the tablets of the covenant of law so that it might be preserved. The Israelites ate manna 40 years until they came to the land that was settled. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan. An omer is 1/10 of an ephah.
Man, I want to find that jar. And I want to see what this manna looks like.
Yeah.
Don't you think it's somewhere
It has to
buried
be.
somewhere?
In Ethiopia, apparently, with a documentary I watched when I was like 16 years old. So.
Yeah, we're gonna see one day. It's gonna be cool because I want to taste it. I mean, we wouldn't be allowed
Tastes
to
like
taste
honey.
it. Yeah, it's cool. That's awesome. There's a lot of different directions we can go. Where do you want to go?
You start.
Okay. Well, I really liked verse 25, and it says, "Then Moses said, 'Eat that today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field.'" And I underline that part. You will not find it in the field. And I'd actually also read Psalm 23 this morning, and I wrote Psalm 23:3 as a reminder when I see this other verse, and it says, "He refreshes and restores my soul, my life. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake." And just thinking about that concept of God has provided for us to have rest. Like he has provided more than enough so that we can take a day of rest. And he modeled that for us as well. And when we continually try to work constantly and keep our minds going constantly for 7 days, and we don't take that rest and we act like it all depends on us, God is telling us we will not find it in the field. Like we're not going to find what we're looking for in the field. Our rest and our restoration and our refreshment only comes from him. And when we choose to take a Sabbath of some point, whatever that looks like for you, some way, when you dedicate that time to the Lord and say, "Hey, I trust you that I'm going to rest," and that tells you, God, that I trust you, that you are going to fulfill my every need. You're going to give me double what I need one day so that I have enough left over. Like this principle is so much more than just manna. Like it's a life principle that we all have to learn, that our rest and refreshment and restoration only comes from the Lord, trusting his word, resting in him. And that's physically and emotionally and spiritually as well.
Yeah, that's really good. In fact, I think the manna God was using the manna to teach these people how to rest. Mm-hmm. When you think about these people, they were slaves, and slaves don't get a rest day. They're 7 days a week. And I think our culture is also a 7 days a week culture.
Oh, yeah.
As a people in general, we don't take a day of rest. We might take a day off of work, but we don't often use that time to rest. We can tend to work, keep working. And a big problem with working at home right now, which many of you are, is your home is now invaded as a workspace. And so it's hard to shut it down. What I liked about this, it simply pointed out 8 ways we're supposed to rest. Every night and 1 day a week. Okay? Every night, the manna would not last overnight. Mm-hmm. But yet on the 7th day, it did last overnight and all that next day, so that no one had to go work and get it. And so what God was teaching them is something we need to learn. We are so habitual in our behavior, it's hard to stop. Mm-hmm. They're complaining about resting. They're complaining, and God basically, they're complaining about being free people, number one. God says, okay, I'm going to start feeding you with this magical bread that flies from the sky and quail, okay, at nighttime, and you guys go out and collect it. And what did some of these knuckleheads do? They went out on the 7th day to go collect bread. Like, they could not shut it down. It's like, oh, well, let me just go and work some more. And you know, these people are us. Yeah. We're the same people. The Sabbath rest and I'll say this real quick. It's one of the very few things that God has given us from the creation of the earth all the way through Jesus and today. The Sabbath rest, God rested on the seventh day. He built rest into the human clock and lifestyle. He built rest into the daily cycle of day and night. We have to sleep as people or we go crazy. But he put a day of rest when he created the world. God rested, right? What? God rested? Okay, what does that mean? And so then it's in the 10 Commandments. So like we all love the 10 Commandments, and we definitely shouldn't kill, steal. We shouldn't lie. We shouldn't covet. We shouldn't worship any other gods. We should keep the Sabbath, keep it holy, a day of rest, right? And then Jesus is defined as the rest. And he even said that the Sabbath was made for us, not us for the Sabbath. In other words, like the Sabbath was made for our benefit. And what does a Sabbath look like? Well, it's a day where you should stop working and you should stop doing workful things and work-like things. And, you know, for some of you, that's put your computer away. For others of you, well, you know what that means. And, you know, I don't want to keep this too legalistic or make this super legalistic, but dedicating 24 hours to rest will literally change your life. Yeah. We do this. And this is something that radically changed your life. I don't know if you want to talk anything about that or whatever as this is going.
I did a whole podcast. I was a guest on a show of a podcast, and I talked for like an hour about Sabbath. So you can go to my Instagram, Jessica Stallbaum, and see the link for that. And that will tell you everything that I would say right now. But there's so much more in this chapter that we can pivot
why don't you
a little
jump
bit.
on pivot?
Verse 12 says, I have heard the murmurings of the Israelites. Speak to them, saying, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God. And I just saw how gracious God is and how compassionate and how patient. He's like, because you are complaining and murmuring, I am going to provide for you. It wasn't even like they were respectful and be like, God, thank you for bringing us out of captivity and rescuing us from our oppressors. Could we please have some meat and bread? No, it was like, oh, to go back to Egypt, and blah, 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 and I'm hungry. Like, it was out of their complaining and murmuring that he still answered them and said, I'm going to give you this, and you're going to know that I am God because of this.
Let me say something about that real quick. On verse 2, really stood out to me. It said, in the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. And God was so gracious that he blessed the people with food and with bread. And I have to imagine that they were like, why are we grumbling?
Yeah, I hope.
And I want to ask us the same thing.
Yeah.
Why are we grumbling? Because I believe the whole community is grumbling right now. Yeah. It's like, it's an addiction to grumble. It's an addiction to criticize. It's like a part of our cancel culture that we have right now. And we'd like to say, you know, oh, the left is a cancel culture. You know, the right is a cancel culture. The libertarians in the middle, or whatever you want to call it, they're a cancel culture. We're a cancel culture right now. Nobody wants to have conversations with the other side. We just want to cancel their opinions and cancel those people, no matter what side we're on, because we just like to criticize and we don't want to have a conversation and actually work through the problems. For the most part, it's very rare. I don't want to be an absolutist when I say that, but it's rare. It's an addiction in our culture right now. And why don't we stop complaining as believers and start praying and loving? Like, let's stop complaining and start connecting and loving more. People, bring people into your life. Spend time with people and love them. I just wanted to throw that out there. What you got?
It's a good side note. So from that verse, I just, again, saw how gracious God was. And I wrote in my Bible next to that verse was, God will provide every time. Do not worry. We have a lot of things we could worry about right now. You know, after service, when we had to cancel church for the non-storm, which turned into a storm in other places, and thankfully we didn't have to deal with that here, and I'm very grateful. But we did cancel church out of an abundance of caution.
I have a complaint that I must issue. First, I want to say thank you for whoever prayed that hurricane away from us. But second, I just need to complain that can you do it earlier next time?
Too long.
Like, come on, it's like 24 hours before church instead of 12. Yeah. That way we don't have to cancel service.
Well, the cool thing was we didn't actually have to retract my word cancel, because we just went online. Like, we're online. We're still online. Like, our online campus just got bigger that day, you know? So after that service, we posed a question, put it on the screen for people in their homes to ponder and talk to with their families. And it was just like, what are your cares and concerns, and share them. And so, it was an opportunity for our kids to share their very real and valid cares. They're like, we're not worried. We're just thinking about this or concerned about it. And we got to talk about it. But we all have those right now. We all have an abundance of cares, concerns, possible worries, anxieties, stresses, unknowns, fear of the future. All those things are happening. But God wants us to know that what we need when we need it will be there. Yeah. Like the manna was there every morning. And likewise, his mercies are new every morning. We get to go to bed in peace because the Bible promises that when we lie down, our sleep will be sweet. And God never sleeps or slumbers. So we can leave it to the creator of the universe to handle the problems while we rest and sleep, which is our portion, and what a blessing. But then we get to wake up knowing that not only is coffee going to be there, but his mercies, God's mercies are new every morning. And we have a Bible that we have we have it on an iPad, we have it on an iPhone, we have it physically. Like, how blessed are we to have the word of the Lord at our beck and call, and all we have to do is just actually engage with it and read it and open it up and do what we're doing right now. We're talking about the Bible and you're here with us, engaging in that and being a part of that. So what we need when we need it is going to be there for us.
Yeah, I love that. One thing, I love verse 30. It says, so the people rested on the seventh day. And it's like, okay, we get it, Lord. We're supposed to rest. But it took them training. They've been trained for 430 years, like 10 generations of training to not rest.
Yeah.
And this world is training us to not rest. It's training us to worry. It's training us to work ourselves out of situations, to earn love, to earn trust. And it's going to take training for you to rest. And so don't be discouraged if you struggle with resting. But lean into that training. Things like turning your social media and work and email off at night so that you can begin to rest every evening. Some things like that. Mm-hmm. Learning to create boundaries and space with work.
Here's one thing you can do with work, and I listened to a podcast about this. When you are working at home and you are done, first of all, set a time in your workday that you're done. So maybe you're done at 5:00. Proclaim out loud to your household, whoever's there, even if it's just you alone, I am done with work today. I am done with work for today.
I had to do that.
I told you to do that because I'm like, say out loud, you're done with work.
And I literally went outside, shut the door, rang the doorbell, and came back inside and said, I'm home. And everyone joked around and ran and hugged me like I was coming home from work, and they loved me.
It sounds silly, but there's something to be said when you're making yourself accountable to people around you, even if it's just to the Lord who's with you always.
Train your kids to rest.
Yeah.
We don't let our kids have their cell phones and their iPads in their room at night. That's a really bad idea.
And to clarify, only one of our kids has a cell phone, and he's 15, and he only uses it when he goes to soccer practice. It's not his thing
but
to use
they
all
have, but they all have iPads, and we don't allow them to have those in their room at night. We don't allow my son to have the cell phone at night. Why? Because what are you going to do in your bed? What do you do in your bed with your cell phone? You just, you scroll, and you're training yourself to be working. That's your time to rest. That's the time to shut down, the social side of life, even the relationships. Shut it down. Just do this one time. Go an hour somewhere without your phone, and don't check whatever's there. See if that's hard for you. If it is, you got some work to do in that area. We encourage you to rest, and we know that if you rest, God will meet you in that rest, and He'll do more in your 6 days of work than you'll be able to accomplish in your 7 days of work without Him. Thanks for listening to Morning Breath. We love you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Morning Breath podcast. If you did, we would love for you to give it a thumbs up and share it with a friend. To follow along with our daily chapter list and for quick access to East Coast podcasts, events, and more, download the East Coast app. It's the best way to stay connected with everything East Coast. We would also love for you to join our online community. Just search for East Coast Christian Center on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks again for listening to the Morning Breath podcast.